So here we are, ladies and gentlemen, again, with the last Sherlock Holmes story. There's not many pages left on this. Another 19, I think. Yes, another 19 more pages. And then that'll be it. So, I think about 3 more weeks left, I think. So here we go. The last Sherlock Holmes, Chapter 5, Part 3. By now, this continued pantomime was beginning to pale on me, and I found it was hard to keep my voice from betraying that fact. I scarcely see what good it can do him to know we have caught this train. It is an express, and the boat runs in connection with it. Even if it engages a special, he must arrive too late. Holmes favoured me with a pitying smile. My dear Watson, you evidently did not realise my meaning when I said that this man may be taken as being quite on the same intellectual plane as myself. His plans have been laid for months, and you can be certain that he will not have overlooked the possibility of my escaping him in London. Our train may have achieved 60 miles an hour, but the impulses in those wires, he pointed out of the window, travel at the speed of thought. Even if we break every record for the run, Moriarty's henchman in Dover will have well over an hour to prepare for our arrival, and when we step from this carriage, we will be as good as dead. I shrugged my shoulders. If that is the case, I muttered, we had better say our prayers. The train does not stop, and there is no way out of this compartment. The Holmes took a large pinch of snuff and sniffed it back in the corner without a word. The train sped on, shaking off the tentacles of suburban London, striking out into the vernal Kentish countryside. Outside life burgeoned fresh and strong and straight, whilst in the filled air of the compartment lurked a blight that sickened and twisted everything it touched. Already I was exhausted again. The simple act of constantly moving from my world to Holmes and back again, as I had to, every moment was in itself deliberating to an extent I had not foreseen. Thank God I had the cocaine to help me, but its spell was wearing off. I needed privacy to renew the dose. I lit a cigar and chewed anxiously on the smoke. How dangerously demonstrating it was to turn from those silly gathered houses to confront a man capable of brutally murdering a young mother, bottling her gravid womb, and then celebrating the infamy with a diabolical pastiche in one of those finest Christmas hymns. We roared through Chatham and Sittingbourne, and still Holmes spoke not a word. We passed through Faversham. He roused himself at last, crossed to the outside of the compartment, tried the door. It was locked. He took out his keychain and opened a small instrument which was attached to it. With this he worked the lock for a few minutes. Then he reached up and pulled an alarm cord. Climb out on the running board, Watson. When I shout, we jump. He opened the door. The brakes were squeaking viciously, but the train was still moving very fast. After you, Holmes. With a shrug he went, and gingerly I followed him onto the narrow board, clinging for support to the brass handholds. The train, now slowing perceptibly along the cinder bed beneath us, was still but a streak. It was very awkward holding on to my bag, whilst grasping the shaking carriage. I was wondering how long I would be able to keep it up when Holmes shouted and was gone. I shut my eyes and leapt out into the space. The fall was painful, but I was soon on my feet and running towards Holmes, who stood beckoning me to the abutment of a bridge some 50 yards away. In the other direction the train was grinding to a halt. As I joined my companion, together we climbed the bank, slipped through a hedge and started off along the little country line. A short walk brought us to the village of Cheltenham, where we repaired to the inn. After a leisurely lunch, we made our plans in consultation with Bradshaw. By leaving Holmes for a few minutes at the table, I was able to restore my flagging energy and confidence, and the day ended without further ado in our sailing. I brought the night packet from New Haven. I do not propose to weary my readers with a detailed account of our peregrinations from France and Germany. The journey from London to the coast was the model upon which all our subsequent travel was undertaken. If I had the strength and time, I might compile a catalogue of moonlight flits, assumed identities, and visible foes, arrangements continually revised, and many of the various laws infringed. But such a task would be tiresome and nothing to the point. All that matters is that no time during those 5 days was Holmes out of my sight, and at no time was I able to bring about the decisive confrontation that I sought. The affair was clearly going to be more difficult than I had imagined. The new month saw us quitting Geneva and for the Val de Vallias, and I found me facing a problem which might aptly be described as insoluble: how to place my dwindling supply of cocaine. I only had to go to the chemist and purchase a quantity of the hypochlorite, which I could then dilute at will. But as I have said, at no time during the 5 days was Sherlock Holmes out of my sight. As a consequence of which I was at no time out of his. I devised several stratagems to obtain the drug secretly, but they all failed. Meanwhile, I was having to eject ever larger doses of the solution and maintain a state of vigilance, which was so essential, for as I continued to deny my body its rightful rest, so it increased the interest in exacted on the mounting debt. Had some Olympian been following our progress, he must have been mightily amused at the contrast between my expectations that morning in Baker Street, and the reality of which was unfolding. I had imagined myself strong and righteous and resolved, leading the bewildered and distraught Holmes to a deserted spot, where man to man we would have things out. Instead, a Holmes who arose each morning still fitter and more lucid than he had been the day before, was dragging his increasingly weakened and distracted companion across Europe on an itinerary which he refused to discuss towards a destination he declined to disclose. In short, with each day that passed, we resembled more and more the Holmes and Watson of old. The crisis came when our departure from Geneva at 3 o'clock in the morning, in a cart full of empty milk churns, ruled out the last possibility of my objecting further supplies of cocaine. I had just 3 days of stock remaining. A few hours after failing to refresh my body with the drug, I would undergo a nervous collapse. For the next 2 or 3 days I would be quite incapable of looking after myself, never mind Holmes. Thus I knew that the denouement could on no account be delayed beyond the 4th day of May. On Saturday the 2nd we walked from Lewick to Candersburg over the Gemini Pass, and I'm told the route is extremely scenic. The condition of my nerves, to say nothing of my ankle, prevented me from forming an opinion on the subject. Holmes quite made up for my low spirits, however, displaying of vitality and exuberance that were almost excessive. We were accompanied by a guide the entire distance, and any initiative on my part was therefore impossible. I remember Holmes making much of the rockfall, which occurred quite close to our path. He clearly regarded the incident as another attempt on his life, and would have none of the guide's protestations with such mishap in common at that season. After spending the night at Candersburg, we descended the next morning to Spite, where Holmes announced that we might indulge in the luxury of public transport for the rest of the day. We accordingly took the steamer to Berens, continued that evening by train to Meiringen, where we put up at the Englischer Hof. Sorry, I hope I pronounced that right. As I kept my vigil through the long Alpine night, I knew that the morrow might inevitably witness either the success or the failure of my enterprise. Fortunately for me, the proprietor of the inn, one Peter Steller, had worked for some time at the Grosvenor Hotel, and his command of English was excellent. Early the next morning, while Holmes was still asleep, I found Stella greeting the dawn from the porch of the hotel with a series of yodeling yawns. I engaged him in conversation concerning the noteworthy signs of the locality, and as a result I was able to suggest to Holmes over breakfast that we walk across the hills to Rosenlaw that day, taking in the famous Launchenberg Falls on our way. Holmes replied he won't, that such had in fact been his intention. I excused myself, and in the privacy of our room I drew the last dregs of the cocaine solution from its bottle, injected it into my scarred forearm. Once again I savoured the gush of strength and clarity and purpose. All was well. The die was cast. Vengeance was to be mine. To my chagrin and dismay, however, Holmes absolutely refused to start our expedition until after lunch. We've been carelessly on the move for 9 days, he pointed out, and morning's rest would do us both good. The walk to Rosenlayer was a matter of only a few hours only, and we would enjoy a pleasant lunch at Hof and set out about 2 o'clock. I was furious. The whim of Holmes posed a serious threat to the success of my efforts, since it prevented me from forcing a conclusion while the stimulating effects of the drug were at their height. I argued, I cajoled, I begged, I sulked, but all in vain. The pictures I painted of charming picnics in alpine meadows, a bottle of Neckatel cooling in a nearby stream, entirely failed to move Holmes. He had made up his mind to spend the morning in Merrigan, and that was that. And so I was obliged to fritter away my precious energy on such all-important activities, admiring our landlord's collection of wood carvings and listening to Holmes hold forth upon the effect of the climate in forming the characters of nations. It was about 2 o'clock when we finally set out. I was silent, husbanding my strength for the trial that lay ahead. My companion, by contrast, was at his blitherest and wittiest, underrated by my preoccupation. He preserved gamely in pointing out to me the many beauties of the surrounding landscapes, but I was conscious only of the sickening staggering of my spirits and of the exhaustion and delirium lurking like a pack of wolves at the fringes of my mind. We had covered about half the distance to the falls when I discovered with much annoyance I had left my watch in the inn. Quite apart from the actual value of the price, the price of some considerable sentiment interest to me, having belonged to my late father, I could not feel easy, I told Holmes, until I had it once more in my pocket. But it was always tedious to retrace one's footsteps, and there was no point in his returning with me to Merrigan. I therefore suggested he continue alone to the falls, where I would rejoin him as soon as possible. Holmes readily agreed, and we parted. I hurried off down the hillside, hoping that I had not made a mistake in letting Holmes out of my sight. But I did not see how else the affair could be managed. I reached Merrigan in a little under the half hour. Stella was lounging on the porch of the inn as I hurried up. I trust she is no worse, I cried. The good old Swiss gazed at me with an expression of stolid puzzlement. Worse? The sick Englishwoman. Come, man, lead me to her. Stella's puzzlement darkened to utter confusion. There is no Englishwoman staying here, exclaimed. What are you talking about? For answer, I thrust a letter under his nose. It was written under the stationery of the Englishire Hof, and explained that shortly after Holmes and I had left for the falls, an English lady had arrived at the last stages of consumption. Nothing could ease her final hours so much as the precious presence of an English doctor, and if I would have the goodness to return, etc., etc. The letter was signed Peter Stella. That individual was now evidently reading it for the first time. A Swiss lad came coming after us with this letter. I explained, of course, I could hardly refuse such a request, but now you tell me. The situation proved too much for the honest Switzer's careful, cultivated English. This is not my right, he burst out. This is not my signing. My paper, yes, but that makes nothing. You should look to. But I did not stay for the landlord's suggestions. I had pressing business elsewhere, and besides, the author of the letter was well known to me. I hurried back up the path leading to Reichenbach's Falls. My watch, which had apparently been safely tucked away in the fob of my all the white shout. Sorry. My watch, which had apparently been safely tucked away in my fob all the while, showed that it was now 3:20. Almost 8 hours had elapsed since I prematurely injected the last of the cocaine, and it was a miracle that I was still on my feet. No doubt it was the air that was the saving of me. Under England's coldest skies, I must have succumbed but the Alpine atmosphere, so precisely pure and cool, seemed to revive my flagging spirits with every breath. The landscape, too, helped me to concentrate, as those rare field heights one might as well be on the moon. For any sense, one has the operative presence of civilization. Sorry, my mind weakened by its long dependency on the drug was already subject to mild hallucinations, but in an odd way these too served my purpose. As times I seemed to be climbing through a painted number of no theatre set, like a good old abstraction from the old morality. No longer good old Watson, but revenge with his dagger. Such notions, no doubt, seem fanciful, set down in cold print. I can only say that they sustain me through the long, dizzying climb from Merrigan to the falls of Brighton back. When I reached my destination at long last, my only anxiety was that Holmes might have given me the slip, nor was I immediately reassured for the first glance that there was no sign of him. Then observed the path which had been cut into the rock halfway around the hill, round the fall, to afford a better prospect of that attraction. Even a man of steady nerves might well have thought twice before venturing out to that narrow ledge. In my condition, while my head was yawning and spinning, it was harrowing in the extreme, but all my trials seemed worthwhile. When coming in view of the falls, I beheld Sherlock Holmes standing there, with his back to the rock, and his arms folded, gazing down at the rushing waters. A yard beyond the path ended abruptly. With grim satisfaction, I realised that I now commanded the only exit from the trap in which Holmes had so obligingly placed himself. And there we go, ladies and gentlemen. Part 4 is next Sunday. And until then, I hope you all have a wonderful week. I hope you enjoy whatever you're doing and enjoy all the build up to Christmas. And I shall see you all next week with Christmas Telly 1975 and 1976 and the last Sherlock Holmes story, Part 4, Chapter 5, Part 4. Until next week, bye bye for now.